Okay, howdy. My name is Karok Ray. I am the director of the Mays Innovation Research Center here at Texas A&M. And I am also the host of our talk show on YouTube called Innovation Matters, where we interview alumni from Texas A&M on some of the latest innovations and their entrepreneurship over their careers. Just to remind you, the Mays Innovation Research Center is an academic research center here at Texas A&M. There's a lot of things we do. We host conferences, we fund research, and we spread our knowledge about innovation broadly, including activities and outlets like this. Today, we're delighted to have Robert Irving join us. He's going to talk a little bit about his career in that spanned really, emergency response and the fire protection, and his path of entrepreneurship. So, Robert, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate y'all inviting me.
So, tell us, Robert. Where'd you grow up?
So I grew up in a little town in East Texas. It's called Hemphill. It's about an hour east of Lufkin, Nacogdoches area. So right on the border of Texas and Louisiana. That's where I grew up and had two older sisters that went to A&M.
Oh, great.
And so it's kind of a generational. My parents didn't go here, but generational in that sense. And so I kind of followed right along.
Oh, great. Yeah. And then when you came to campus, what did you decide? What college were you in? What did you major in?
Yeah, so I actually came here on a scholarship to powerlift. So I was an athlete at A&M.
Oh, wow. You were a powerlifter?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow,
So I powerlifted for 4 years for A&M. I did an undergrad, and I started out in engineering, actually, and I have an uncle down in Houston that I went and spent a week with, and he convinced me to switch over to business. And it was one of those stereotypical things where, lawyers and doctors and engineers, they all make high salaries, and he's like, well, what nobody tells you is how much money you can make in business. I was 18, and so he owns a couple of companies down there, and so I went and spent a week with him and did all that, and then swapped my major to business.
Oh, wow. Well, that's impressive. Tell me, what was your max deadlift?
So I won 3 national titles while I was at A&M. So I deadlifted 675 pounds.
Oh, my gosh.
At 181.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. And then how about squat? Can you tell us the squat?
A little over 525, 530.
Wow, that's impressive. Now, was there a team here on powerlifting team?
Yeah. So it was
you were on that?
Yeah. In high school, they did equipped powerlifting, meaning you had to wear like suits and all that stuff.
Right.
And I remember getting here in my first year, I kept getting beat, and I figured out why. It's because I didn't have the money to buy all the expensive equipment, and these things were thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And so I got frustrated with it, and I was like, this was right when we're all powerlifting, meaning that you just don't wear anything, you just have on, just a pair of shorts, if you will.
Right.
So I transitioned into that and was fairly successful, and that's whenever I moved my way up, went to Florida, went to Pennsylvania, Colorado, went all over.
Oh, great. Good for you. So you transitioned into the Mays Business School, is that you said?
Yeah, so I started out actually at Blend Team, and so that was kind of where I was at the very beginning, and transitioned from Blend Team full-time into A&M. And my degree is actually human resources, and then with a focus in business.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And I also saw during your time at A&M, you were at the rec center leading the strength and conditioning team. Is that right?
So I worked there for 4 years, 4 or 5 years.
As a student?
Yep. Right into grad school, managing the weight room. Went through the expansion. So when we built the new one, that was a long, arduous process. But yeah, I worked there. That was really the thing that kick-started my career, if you will, was working for Jared Wilson and those guys. And it's funny just how serious they took that job. Looking back on it, it's a weight room, right? It's not, but like you go talk to Jared, he's probably
I know Jared. Yeah,
he's the most serious boss I've ever had.
Oh, I bet.
Oh, dude, the guy's he's extremely intense.
Yeah, he is intense.
So I worked right under his wing for 4 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
oh, that's
every
great.
day. So.
Yeah, they've got a great line of trainers actually. I used them once actually last year.
Great.
I had great results.
Yeah. No, I like
so tell me, what did you do when you were about to graduate? What were you thinking of doing at that point?
Yeah, so I was looking at 2014. So actually in 2012, so my father's a 30-year firefighter. And so in 2012, they had this contract with a company called Iris to go overseas to Afghanistan to do contract firefighting. So I was like, they're paying those guys a lot of money, and it was tax-free because you spent so many days out of country. And my dad was like, you need to look into this. So I went through TEACS Fire School.
Right.
So I did EMT.
Very famous fire school, right?
Right. Oh yeah, best in the world.
World class.
Absolutely. So I went through EMT school, fire school, hazmat, aircraft rescue. I was teed up and ready to go.
So you did all that while you were a student or afterwards?
I took off the spring semester of 2012. So from January to June, I spent 5 days a week, 10 hours, 12 hours a day between EMT school, fire school, all that stuff was just back to back to back.
Wow. And that was to train yourself to become a
firefighter.
Okay.
Yep. So I got TCFP certified, got all that stuff done, and I was was thinking about going. and they unoccupied the military bases with military personnel. And I was like, well, I'm not going to Afghanistan with a water hose.
Right.
A big water hose. And so re-enrolled back into college, and finished up my degree on, kind of an accelerated path because I'd missed a semester, if you will. Yeah. So, that experience with that information kind of led me to Mark Bendon. And so that's whenever I went and met with Mark. It was probably in 2013, 2014, and started looking at the master's program. And, showed him the skill set that I had from the fire school. And I was like, hey, this really plays into the safety engineering realm of what you're doing.
That's right.
I think I could couple all this together and make a career out of this was my thought process going from undergrad.
So for those of you who don't know, Mark is a good friend. He's really an icon here at Texas A&M.
Yeah, for sure.
He's a faculty affiliate of the Mays Innovation Research Center. He's very entrepreneurial. He's an engineer that's kind of based in public health. Did a lot of work on standing desks, started a company, sold to Veridesk. Very entrepreneurial and exciting.
You walk in his office and he's got 15 patents on the wall.
Yeah, that's right.
He's a great guy.
That's right.
Yeah, I know his sons well, and I've worked with him for a while. And so during undergrad is when I joined the Entrepreneurial Society here at A&M. And so what is it called? It's Aggie.
So there's a few. There's a McFerrin Center.
Yep.
There was which back then?
Startup Aggieland.
Startup Aggieland.
Yep.
Okay,
yep.
You joined
Startup Aggieland. I joined Startup Aggieland and actually created a product there. So that was my first. So it was called Smart Spray, and it was my first real entrepreneurial thing. So whenever I was transitioning from undergrad to grad school, I took a job at mechanical engineering, and I was running all their 3D printing labs. So I was teaching SolidWorks, I was teaching the 3D printing, and it was really on the cusp of innovation.
Right.
And so going through all these machines, the different PLA plastics and all this stuff. So I created this product. One of my sisters, she wasn't like severely attacked, but she was attacked in New Orleans one time, and I had this idea. I was like, what if you had this pepper spray product that grabbed your phone? Right, so what it was a retractable spring that would grab your phone, right? And it was a pepper spray, and so inside it we used the hardware, basically like what you use as a mouse, right? It's low power Bluetooth ping technology.
Yeah.
And it rerouted to an app, and so as soon as you deployed this pepper spray, it would call 911. It would send a text message to preset contacts of your geolocation. It would take pictures and do all that stuff, and it would tell them like, hey, the pepper spray's been deployed. This person's in distress. And I actually received a grant from Blake Petty on that.
That's great.
And yeah, so we were running with it, filing the patents and everything. And
great! You filed a patent on it?
Yeah.
Nice.
So the story doesn't end great.
Okay.
So there was 3 MIT engineers that had, I think it was $990,000 more than I did. I think my grant was 10 grand. And so they had about 990,000 more. And they had pretty much the same thing. I reached out to them and talked to them for a little bit because I felt like I had a better mousetrap.
Right.
Theirs was a standalone pen product, but it used the same technology, that's kind of
same idea.
Right, exact same idea.
Oh,
but it just didn't grab to everything. This thing was just a retractable spring. It grabbed your leg. It would just grab anything. And so we kind of, at that point, we kind of punted and pivoted, and they had already filed a provisional patent before we did.
Oh, I see.
And so it's kind of one of those situations where you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard spot.
Right.
But that was like probably the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey and figuring out, like one of the things that I figured out through that was really cool was they kept tasking me with figure out who your target market is, who you can sell this to.
Right.
It's kind of obvious. We
Right.
sell it to the women, right?
Right,
Well, that
right.
wasn't the truth. When we did all this market research, it was actually the dads and the brothers
The dads, huh?
that were
Oh,
buying it for
interesting.
their daughters and
Yeah,
wives and all that.
sisters, yeah.
Realtors were buying it for the real estate agents that go out alone. And
Interesting.
yeah, it was very interesting to see kind of like maybe it's not what you think it is.
Right. That's great. That's great. Well, that was a great experience you had.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you fabricated that through your 3D printing knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that
Yep,
you designed it in SolidWorks, I guess.
Yeah, I'll have to show
that's
you one day.
cool.
I'll show you the presentations we put together.
Yeah.
Inside SolidWorks, you can do a lot of 3D modeling,
Right.
finite element analysis, and so we were able to figure out just kind of how the pressures would work. It had to be rounded edges and springs, and it was. I had a couple other guys, software engineer, that wanted to join up and help us, and so he wrote all the code.
Right.
But yeah, learned a lot.
Wow.
Learned a lot.
That's great. That's great. Now, what happened after that?
Kind of dropped that, kept staying at A&M in mechanical engineering, really enjoyed that. Started the master's program.
Right.
That summer went to Anadarko, so big oil company, did crisis and emergency management. And so spent 4 months with those guys, did a lot of offshore stuff, went to Colorado a lot, did some cool drone technology stuff, finished that up, and then came back to school. That was during the summer of 2015-ish.
Yeah.
And so that's when API Group hired me. So I was about a year out from graduating.
Yeah.
And one of my buddies from the gym always kept bothering me about going to work for him. And I was like, fire sprinklers, like, this can't be that difficult. I've got a fire background, and yada yada. And
what does API do?
So they're a conglomerate. They're really a parent company. They're publicly traded, and they've got probably, let's just say, 40 parent-child companies, if you will, underneath them. They do everything from overhead doors to pipelines to majority fire protection, so fire and life safety. So all the sprinkler systems and alarm systems you see in these buildings, we install them all.
Sure.
So that's what they did.
That's great.
Yeah.
And you were there for several years?
I was there from 2015 till 2018, and so they paid for my MBA program through Minnesota, so I've spent a week, a month.
You're in Minnesota, University of Minnesota?
Well, it was St. Thomas Epicot.
Up in Minnesota?
Yeah.
Oh, so you went up to Minnesota?
1 week a month.
Wow.
For 18 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
And it was, so Lee Anderson was the owner of API Group, and he had a very special relationship with this university, and it was kind of a hybrid between, what was best for the organization from an M&A standpoint and a strategic standpoint, as well as, it still had the curriculum backing from a university, if you will. And so they kind of paired the two together and made a very tailored, MBA program. And
Great.
Went through that, and then ultimately in 2018, they decided, from a big business decision, they decided they wanted to go union with the workforce. And we had a disagreement there, and ultimately parted ways, and that's when I started Better Fire Protection.
Okay. Where were you living at the time? Did you move back to this area?
I've always been here.
I've
always been here, yeah. So I've been here since 2010.
Oh, great. Yeah. Okay, got it. And so now Better Fire is your company that you started, right?
Yep, and subsequently sold.
Yeah, tell me about that. So was that you were the founder, sole founder and CEO?
Yeah, I had a couple partners in it. I had a private investor. So that was my thing. Is I wasn't the guy that wanted to have a small boutique business. It's like I knew I could scale it. I already know the systems and the robustness and how to do all this. I just need somebody to write me a check.
Right.
That's a little harder than a lot of people make it out to be to go get a big check. So I finally secured that money, secured that check, started the company, grew it. We had some big contracts with A&M, Prairie View A&M, Walmart, Sam's Club. That's the beauty of the fire protection industry, is that it's mandated by law to inspect, test, and maintain these systems. So all commercial facilities, all your apartment complexes, everybody has to put it in, right, fire and life safety, and then you have to inspect, test, and maintain it every year. So it has this recurring revenue piece to it that's contractually obligated for you, so you can really build steady, predictable cash flows.
So you were providing a service, or did you have a novel product?
No, providing a service.
Okay.
Yep. So definitely a service-based company.
Okay.
There's two pieces to the business. One is new construction. So for instance, like this ILSQ building, we're building that with Vaughn. And then the other side is the service space, which is going out and doing inspection, test, and maintenance of existing systems.
Okay, so let's suppose I'm a company. I guess let's just take CJ Barbecue.
Yeah.
And I want to hire you. What services do you offer? And
yeah, so we would probably do your extinguishers, right? We would look at your kitchen hood systems because you're a restaurant of some sort. We would come in and you have a backflow preventer, which basically stops the water from going into the building, or it stops the water from going back out to the city. We would test that, and we would test your fire alarm system to make sure it automatically dials 911 and it operates as intended, and then we would test your fire sprinkler system. So you have all of those types of systems all in that one little building.
Oh, okay.
And so that that annual contract's going to be several $1,000s.
Sure.
And that's just one restaurant, and so you extrapolate that over.
And mostly your clients were commercial, or any residential, or not really?
I mean, so in the city college station, or if you're inside of an enforceable jurisdiction, 6,000 square feet is your limit. So if you build a house over 6,000 square feet, you have to put fire protection in it.
Oh, like this? At this level?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
6,000.
It's a big house.
Yeah, that's a big house. So that's just curious. That's 6,000 under roof, or 6,000 living, or how?
6,000 living. Yeah,
6,000
air conditioned, heated and cooled.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's under that. Actually, you don't have to do that. Oh, interesting.
Correct.
I don't think most people knew that. I just didn't know that.
No. It's one of those things where a lot of people get themselves in a bind with fire protection because they'll, let's say you go out and buy a building, right? You're buying just a warehouse, and you don't understand the commodity classification of the contents that you're trying to put in there.
Right.
And so let's say that system's designed for these tables, and you bring in rubber tires. That's a whole different commodity.
Right.
And so now you have to completely overhaul your system. You have to have new water supplies, and it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. And if you didn't do your upfront due diligence, and we've gotten in the situations where it's like you just can't open. The fire marshal shuts it down because it's his risk. and then your insurance company comes in. So there's all these different people that have, the insurance company has a perspective, the owner, the use, the occupancy of it, the fire marshal,
Interesting.
And then us.
And this service has always been privately provided, right? Is that right?
Yep.
And most people contract it out. Does anyone do it internally?
No, you're not allowed to. You have to have all the licenses.
Oh,
so in order
okay,
to do it,
okay.
yeah, it's extremely heavily licensed. So
I see.
whenever I was working for the other company, I had to get all my fire alarm, fire extinguisher, backflow. It's kind of like a professional engineering license for fire protection.
And you kind of provide a turnkey service?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Okay,
yep,
great.
100%.
And who were your competitors at that time?
Yeah, so I mean,
nationwide chains or
yeah, exactly,
or local?
exactly, and that's where the opportunity exists for small businesses. Is the majority of these companies, and I knew this going into it. Kind of my mindset was to build it and sell it in probably 5 years. Was kind of my mindset. Happened a little faster. Took about 3. But yeah, the majority of the people you're competing against are private equity backed, and they're nationwide. They're very large, very robust, have a very high overhead component to them. They have corporate allocation fees and things like that. And so their bottom lines are a little skewed. And so I knew getting in there and competing with them wouldn't be that difficult.
Okay, and was that your kind of your innovation? Was that you were leaner and meaner than
exactly.
the big companies?
That was our moat. Was we were just leaner and meaner. We were able to hire and to scale and to grow at a very rapid pace.
Okay.
Cash flow is tough, but at the end of the day, it all worked out.
Were there any novel technologies you were deploying? Or, I mean, I guess.
I think that one of the things, and I see this now that I've sold my company, when you get into these bigger businesses, they're so much harder to pivot. When you're looking at software, and these, I'm writing a custom software right now for an estimating technology, and it's just everybody has to put their input into it, and so it takes so long. Whereas when you're at a smaller company, you can just pick up the phone and change. You can just move, and so that I would say that was one of our novel things, was being able to utilize the most useful technology from a service dispatching quoting software. We use a company called Service Trade, which is a web-based app, it was just very good. It was very robust. It was specifically designed for the fire protection industry. And that was definitely a pivotal part for why we succeeded.
How useful to you was that training you did at the Teaks Center? I know that's a world-class facility.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have to tell my friends who visit College Station that, no, the airport is not on fire.
Yeah.
It hasn't exploded.
Yeah, no. It was very useful. I tell those stories all the time. One of the problems, or one of the things in the service-based industry, is people cut corners, right? And they want to just hang these tags. They want to rush through this stuff. It's like, well, another man is relying on you to do your job. That firefighter that comes in this building assumes the standpipe system works. So the standpipe is an internal hydrant system, if you will, inside this building, based on its square footage. And so they would be able to carry their hose in here and hook up to it and use it. They assume that it's going to work. Right? Well, if they get in here and it doesn't, right, they're kind of in a bind. And so those kind of relations translate over from a firefighting perspective to really respect the craft of what we're doing, and make sure that it's being done appropriately.
Now, your company never actually had to fight the fire, right?
No.
You would just alert the fire department.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
And in your training, did you ever need to do any actual firefighting, or were you?
In Teaks, I did, yeah, absolutely.
In Teaks, you did, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But as a business person, you didn't have to.
No, we had some funny stories, of people like, at one of the places here in town, I won't name it, but they baked. Guy was trying to bake his girlfriend some donuts and on a cookie sheet, and the oil falls off, catches on fire. He tries to carry it out. It burns him. He drops it, sets the apartment on fire. The sprinkler head goes off, puts the fire out, and then we show up because we have to repair it. But it's cool to see your work. In that instance, if that sprinkler wasn't there, it'd burn the whole building to the ground.
Oh yeah, right.
You know what I mean? It would have taken hours to put it out.
Right.
Whereas this thing puts it out in a matter of seconds, and so
that's cool.
It's cool to see your work.
That's great. So I'm just curious. I mean, this is kind of a new area for me. I'm just curious about this. Do you feel like the regulations are sufficient, or do you feel like they're unnecessary? Do people have strong enough incentive to protect their own property on their own?
I think that it depends on the letter of the enforcement. And so, we work all across the country now, and so I get to see this a lot where, certain fire marshals will push certain agendas, if you will. So for instance, there's some things like, if you go into the rec center at A&M, we have sprinklers above the swimming pool. And that chlorine just massively corrodes these things, right? Well, NFPA 13 in section 1.1, which is the scope, tells you that this building has to be sprinklered throughout. Right, and the only way that you can caveat this throughout sentence is section 8.15 will tell you where you don't have to put them. Well, there's only about 5 or 10 things you don't have to put sprinklers, and so above a swimming pool is not one of them. And so it's like stuff like that where I think the industry gets a bad rap sometimes, where it's like a money grab almost.
Yeah.
And then the other side of it where I think the industry loses is our materials and things are extremely expensive because they're stamped and rated, UL rated for fire protection. And so it may be an inferior product to, say, a plumbing product, but it still has the term fire associated with it, so it's 5 times more than what a normal one would be.
Got it.
But in terms of the code sufficiency, absolutely. There's new things coming out now that we can't quite figure out yet. So marijuana growth facilities are one of them that we just haven't really determined how flammable is it, how do we want to put it out. Lithium-ion battery storage is one of those that we're just kind of scratching our heads about. These massive Amazon warehouses that store things at 40, 50 feet in the air. How do you get water from the ceiling to the floor? And not, everything's encapsulated in plastic. And so how do we wet that? And there's a lot of fire dynamic and modeling to it. And that's the engineering side of it that's fun. It's looking at these crazy commodities. We protect one in Huntsville that's a ammunition manufacturing facility. And so they have primers and gunpowder, which is extremely explosive and flammable. So it's challenges, right? They're fun. But it goes back to the insurance company and the fire marshal. Are they going to enforce it to the letter of the law? And if not, then it's going to get brushed aside.
You've got deep domain expertise in this area. What, in your opinion, what is the opportunities, the unsolved problems here? What innovations do you think could, like what technology does not exist yet, but could solve some of the problems?
It's a very antiquated, old industry, right? It's one of those industries where these older guys like to make it difficult, right? This is Schedule 40 black steel iron pipe. Right, it's heavy. A joint of 6-inch, 21-foot long is 510 pounds. And we have men picking that stuff up on a daily basis to hang it in the air because it has to be steel or the fire would melt it. Right, so everything we do is extremely redundant. It always has fail-safes and backups. And so this industry as a whole is stuck back in the pre-1990s from a technology standpoint. And that's the opportunity that exists, is that from a cash flow standpoint, it's mandated by law. It's kind of like insurance. It's a necessary evil. And that was the way I always sold the inspections business. Is like, look, you may not like me or whatever it is, but you're going to pay somebody to come and inspect this stuff, right? Because we have to put tags on everything. And so give me an opportunity, right? And so I guess that's where the opportunity comes from, is that a lot of these businesses, with the baby boomers, and I'm sure John talked about it on the last episode, is business acquisition is huge for us right now, and that's a majority of what I do is M&A. It's looking at these businesses that we're looking to buy, analyzing their cash flows and their customer diversity base, and understanding, and it's funny because you kind of get biased, but it's understanding, what is their P&L? Right? What does it look like over the past 5 years? What's predictable? A lot of these guys are looking to sell these businesses and exit over the next coming years because they're baby boomers. So that's the opportunity.
So you were talking about, I guess, a heavy steel pipe. Is that right? Tell me, what's the context of that?
It's right there. So if you look, it's right up there. This building is sprinklered.
Oh, I see it. So these are the pipes that the
water travels through.
Has to travel through.
Yeah, so we'll basically come in off the city main, right, and we'll come inside the building, and then we'll sprig up to a set of control valves, and then from there we'll put piping network throughout the entire building, which is steel.
And then it has to be, by law, it has to be steel?
Unless you're in residential. So apartment complexes have plastic.
Oh, really? Okay, okay. And you guys lay the pipe? You lay all that pipe?
We thread it, we groove it, we weld it.
I see. Got it.
And so there's, hospitals are a big one, industrial. We do a lot of work in Houston at the industrial places, obviously higher education. Any commercial building has to have it.
I mean, it sounds pretty labor intensive.
Extremely.
Can robots help, you think? I mean,
I don't think so. I think that, at the end of the day, the problem is that you're always in a fight and a battle for ceiling space. And so we use what's called BIM technology now, which is like a computer modeling. It works very well when everyone uses it. So what this is basically we'll get a floor print of a building from a CAD structure standpoint, and we'll know where all the beams are and all the concrete T-posts, and if it's post tension or whatever it is. And then everybody will start to upload their models inside this model. And so you'll have the HVAC guy, the plumbers, the electricians, the sprinkler guy, everybody puts their stuff in there. And then we run a process called clash detection, and then we all begin to move. And so we're trying to, well, the problem is that unsophisticated subcontractors don't use this technology.
Sure.
And so they'll outsource it to somebody who doesn't really have any sort of financial tie to it being successful or not.
Right, right.
When it's used correctly, take for instance this ILSQ project, when the general contractor holds everyone accountable to it, then it's a very successful job.
Yeah.
And in theory, right, it's supposed to go in like Legos. So we ship all this stuff in on an 18-wheeler, and it's got steel pipe and it's threaded, and you take piece A1B and you stick it in the air, and then A1C and then A1D, and you just bolt this thing together like a Lego project.
Yeah.
Well, that's where the term pipe fitter comes in, is whenever he's putting it up and he hits a piece of ductwork, or he hits a piece of conduit, or he hits a light or a wall or whatever it is.
Right.
And that's where that labor intensive, you just have to have a human element there, because he
Yeah.
starts fitting pipe.
So you guys are, for new commercial construction, you're involved in the construction.
Oh, absolutely. We're another contractor.
Another contract. You're
or another sub. That's exactly what we are.
That's right.
That's the construction side. The service side is where we work direct with owners.
Right.
And so we're working, with North Point Crossing or Hunter Goodwin and these guys, and we work directly for them, and we go in and maintain their systems existing. Or traditionally what happens, and this is kind of the blunt of the industry, is that it corrodes over time. Steel with stagnant water in it just sits there and just eats and corrodes. And so you're coming up on the life cycle of 20 years, let's say, and that stuff just starts getting pinhole after pinhole.
The water just stays up there?
Just sits stagnant.
Just sits there for...
Just waiting on something to happen.
Oh, wow. So if you don't use your fire, if your sprinklers never go off, it's just going to...
Every year we'll drain it.
You drain it every year.
So we drain it every year, and we'll refill it. We'll come in and test it, make sure it all still works as designed. But yeah.
So I guess on the business side, running the Better Fire business, what's your biggest pain point?
Probably people, I would say. Hiring individuals. We grew the business very fast. From zero to a little over $10 million in a matter of 2 or 3 years, and that's a very quick scale pace. And so trying to handle all the hiring and training, reinvesting back in your people, developing that culture, if you will.
Right.
It was very difficult. A bunch of the guys that work for me were actually college friends of mine.
Sure. Sure.
That ultimately just had odds and end jobs. Weren't making a lot of money, and I was like, hey, it's a very niche, lucrative industry. They don't teach this in school.
Right.
There's only 2 programs in the country. One's in Maryland and one's at OSU, and that's it.
Most people don't even know about this. Probably.
No, it's a kind of an unheard of industry.
Right.
But it's very highly paid, and it's very recession resistant because of the recurring revenue piece.
Yeah.
So as if the economy takes a dive and construction goes down, we still have all this inspect, test, and maintain business over here that we still have to do. And so we're not that dependent on the economy, if you will, from a business standpoint.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now tell me about the exit, I guess. So you were thinking of selling? That your goal from the outset?
That was always my goal at the back end. I didn't start this business till I'm going to run it for the next 35 years.
And why is that? You didn't?
I just knew that there was more to business than just this fire protection industry. It was a great opportunity for me. I had, kind of the world in front of me. I was, I think I wasn't married at the time. I'm married now. And no kids. I didn't even have a dog, so I had nothing else to do but work. And so I worked a lot, and I don't regret that. It's just one of those things where you grind.
But you had no ambitions to be the largest fire protection provider in the world.
I knew once I got it to about that $10 million mark that there's a total addressable market, right? A TAM. And I knew that you're about at the TAM of what this industry has to offer you in this geographical area. So the only other option is to start acquiring people, right? Or start, expanding out to Houston, Austin, Dallas, wherever. And that, there's a ton of liability that gets opened up. That I didn't grow up with any money. So my dad's a firefighter. My mom's been disabled since I was a little kid, and so I saw this and I was like, my entire net worth is wrapped up in this thing. Is there an opportunity here to sell? And so luckily, one of my mentors, it was on the board of CI Capital, so he had some insider information, if you will, of just kind of. I kept going home at night after I talked to him and just kind of told myself, like, what does that guy gain out of lying to me? And so he was telling me kind of, the process of selling, what it looks like, and all that. And that's when I really got involved in M&A and really started to understand it from a real standpoint of network and capital adjustments and going through all this stuff. And so that's whenever, got the group together and was like, look, I think that this is a better move for us, is to join a much larger company, diversify our risk, take some chips off the table, reinvest in private equity. That was a big part of it, was the reinvestment component in a private equity.
Okay.
There's a ton of opportunity there on invested capital to make multiples there. which is, if you 4 or 5x your money there, how hard and how long would you have had to work for that to take place?
Yeah.
And then as these private equity companies, I told you BlackRock came in and bought us. As they come in and make these acquisitions, one of their goals is they haven't really decided if they want to roll it and go public, if they want to do SPAC, traditional IPO, sell it to another private equity company. Right. But each time, as you move up higher in this food chain, they begin to incentivize you with private shares. And, it's kind of like a Google or one of these guys. Yeah. They give you X number of salary and then X number of stock and say, hey, we want you to stay. And so I knew all that stuff was coming. And I knew there'd be a ton of opportunity there, not just for me, but for all my people. I was able to hire and scale. One of the things I've always told people about business is that you want to make business decisions, not cash flow decisions. And as a small business owner, I made a lot of decisions based on cash flow. And that doesn't mean that it's the best decision for the business.
Sure.
Right? It's the best decision that keeps everybody paid, which is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And I knew that joining a larger company like this, and I really liked, Phil is my good friend, and I really liked him, and Jeff Everard, our CEO, solid guys, really got along well with them. And so, we joined last January.
Okay.
And
you were founder and CEO of Better Fire, is that right? Okay. You had other co-founders, or you were the only?
Yeah, I had a couple partners in a private, basically a private fund.
And then once you sold, you joined Summit, is that right?
Yep.
Okay, and that's a larger fire protection company?
At the time, they were probably 1,200 people. Now they're 3,500.
So where are they based out of?
They're based out of Minnesota.
Oh, I see. Okay. Minnesota, your old place.
Right, I know, right down the road. And so whenever they bought us, it was one of those things where they had an organization, 2 organizations they had bought in Dallas, an organization in Houston, and an organization in Lufkin. And so they had these other offices that were very strong in other parts of the business we weren't very strong in. So there's a PE side, a pre-engineered side, and a fire extinguisher side, which are all of your kitchen hood systems. They come pre-engineered in your fire extinguishers. Well, that wasn't something that we were very big in. We didn't, we did it, but we weren't like pushing it.
Sure.
Well, none of these other guys did fire sprinklers. Well, we were knocking down $7-8 million a year in sprinklers. And so it was one of those things where we kind of fit the perfect puzzle piece to say, hey, they can help us with their expertise. We can help them with ours. And then as this thing continues to scale, which, everybody tries to sell you the rainbow picture. These guys actually did it. They took it from whenever they bought us, we were doing, I want to say it was around like 13, 14, it was probably $15 million in EBITDA total, Summit was. And when they sold it to BlackRock, it was doing 52.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they did that in a matter of 12 months.
Wow.
And then now it's well over 140 million in EBITDA.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
not bad.
It's not bad. It's all right.
Bad.
And that's why whenever I told you I elected to stay after my employment agreement, it was like, this could be one of the coolest rides that I get to be on as an employee, an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And being high up in the organization, you get to see all this and understand it and kind
What's your role right now at Summit?
So my role, I'm a VP of Vice President. I oversee 8 offices in Texas, about $70 million in revenue. And so my day-to-day looks like, I usually work from home unless I'm going to travel to one of these offices inside Texas. And then every office has a branch manager. And typically those branch managers are prior owners. That's kind of how that works. They buy these companies, they allow you to reinvest in private equity, and they hold on to you.
Okay.
And so I help them with organizational structure. How are we going to scale? What are our pain points? What do the systems look like, the processes? Because that's the main thing they change when they buy you is they say, hey, here's some new accounting software, here's new scheduling dispatching software, here's new forms, here's all this new stuff. So I make sure that they have some cohesion there. And then really develop an org chart and say, all right, now it's time to put the lever down. And it's been challenging. It's been good. I've got a really solid group of guys. The challenging part is you're taking an owner that's likely twice my age, and but I think you earn that respect from them with your understanding of business. And and when we go through like working processes and things like that, they begin to see that it's like, okay, there's some solvency behind all this crazy stuff. One of the guy from Lufkin calls it Summit's fuzzy math, which is, are you familiar with cash and accrual based accounting?
Yeah.
So, right. So imagine explaining that to, a bunch of rednecks. And that's what we deal with. And I'm not, I come from a very humble background, so I don't take offense to those statements, but it's like, I'm sitting there trying to explain to them that, as we go through the month, our costs and our billings are shown on a cash basis. Well, then eventually at the end of the month, we switch over to an accrual basis based on an assumed gross margin of unclosed projects and all, And so I gave my spiel to him, and I said, all right, does that make sense? And one of the ladies stood up, and she was like, it made sense until you started talking. I was like, and everybody got a good laugh out of it. And I was like,
that's right.
I'm going to keep trying.
Yeah.
But no, that's kind of what my day-to-day looks like.
So you brought your entire staff over?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so they're all employed by Summit now?
Yeah, 100%. We didn't lose anybody.
Are they all local to College Station?
Yeah. Our office is in South College Station.
Oh, it is? Is that right? You have an office here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, great. That was your old Better Fire office?
Correct.
Oh,
Yeah,
great.
we probably have near 80 employees.
Okay.
Like 90 employees.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So we've got a lease down there, and like I said, we have Houston, Pasadena, Mansfield, Fort Worth. All the offices.
I see. So I guess in traditional like tech acquisitions, you might have some like golden handcuffs, and then the owners, the founders are sort of waiting for that to expire before they do something else. Is that what are your plans? Do you have any
Yeah, I think it's funny. I've been told many times not to predetermine my judgment on what I want to do, because they can obviously incentivize you in different ways to stay. I think in my mind, I'm going to stick it out to see the IPO or the next sell, and I think at that point, we'll see. I'd like to join Phil in his private equity company. He owns a company called Sidekick Operators, and so I've worked with those guys. They're all Aggies.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
wow.
They're all Aggies.
What does that company do?
So they're a private equity firm that buys, either non-controlling or controlling interest in service-based businesses.
Right.
Yeah, and so like for instance, one of the ones they own now is called Oscar Larson, and they install electrical vehicle charge stations throughout the country. And so I believe he bought them in 2020.
Where are they located? These Aggies.
Phil and them are out of New Braunfels area.
Oh, okay.
I think San Antonio, New Braunfels, and Houston. There's a handful of them in there, and it's stuff like that that really interests me. I think there's an opportunity to build generational wealth out of acquiring these businesses, teaching them how to scale, implementing systems, processes, procedures, maybe doing a roll up and then selling it to a larger private equity firm that wants to do something else with it.
Right.
I know that their timeline horizon is pretty extended. A lot of these have a 4 to 5 year deployment of capital kind of timeline. Sidekicks is a little bit more extended than that, and so I think that's probably next. The other thing, I know you saw we do a lot of short-term rentals, so I do a lot of real estate on the side, and so that's been fun and interesting. I think that I've got probably 2 or 3 years left on my contract, and so I'm definitely locked up. For a little while,
right.
I hate talking about it like I'm in prison, but it's not that bad.
So you're doing Summit is still fire protection.
Absolutely.
So your
100%.
life is still 100% fire protection.
100%, yeah.
So you're still in the.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's morphed into a lot more business, which I kind of like. Is the bigger business picture, and I'm not in the day-to-day operations trying to figure out how to design a system or something like that. But I still have to get down in the weeds. With some of these guys, they want to bid a big project. We bid one last week. It was $1.4 million out of Houston. And those guys don't have the technical expertise to bid something like that. And so I'll get my chance to dive down into the weeds, and I enjoy it. I do. Okay. I just think that I think after a while, you want a different change of pace. Try something else.
Yeah. So let me kind of speak to our ultimate audience as students in the room.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what would you say to? Let me ask you, what was really elemental during your time at A&M that determined sort of where you are today, kind of as an entrepreneur?
Yeah.
What were the key, most valuable parts of your education, either in curriculum or outside?
Yeah, I think a big part of it for me is the discipline that came with, working out, working full time, being a student athlete.
Yeah.
I just didn't have time to do anything else, and so I had my head down and was working hard for a long time. And I think that discipline just kind of overlaid into the working world, and you just kind of evolve that as a habit of life and how you live, and kind of a sense of excellence and wanting to do more. I think there's no question that some of it's luck. You kind of hit the right strokes at the right time. But I do think I think networking is a big strength of mine that I do a lot. I'm intentional about it. If you set me on someone that's like, hey, this guy would really, someone you need to know, then I'll turn the charm on. And my wife laughs at me every time I do it, because I'll, there's times where I'm like an extroverted introvert. If I don't need to say anything, I'll sit in my corner and be quiet. If I think that it's time for me to go, then I'll go. But I think meeting key people like Dr. Benden, Phil, Bill Welch. Dr. Welch is another one that, I met him at 5 a.m. in a sauna one time, and he's like 80. And I had no idea who he was, and we sat there and talked, and it's funny, we just saw each other every single morning at 5 a.m. at the gym, and ultimately developed a great relationship. I moved out to his ranch in Burnham during college and lived there for a year, and been helping him with all kinds of different business stuff. And so I think it's being intentional with those relationships and being upfront about. Like I told Phil when we first started talking, I was like, "Here's, I'm going to use you as a mentor, and I'm going to annoy you until you tell me to go away." And it was all about business. Tell me a book to read. What do I need to do? And so he really, as long as you take their advice and run with it, I think that's the biggest thing.
Now, a lot of students, A&M does a great job placing a lot of students to big companies.
Yeah, absolutely.
You could say that's kind of what we do. It's
right.
Kind of like but
staple.
It's a staple, yeah. Given that that's the majority of what students end up doing, like how did you manage to kind of strike out on your own? And what would you say to students who may not want that big company lifestyle?
Yeah, I think it's, I answered this question on a podcast not too long ago. They said, how do you avoid the rat race? And my answer was, don't. If you don't get inside these bigger organizations and understand how life works and what these big systems and these operating systems are and how this stuff goes, time is on your side when you're in college. You're not in some big rush to go out and I think a lot of people take this entrepreneurial thing and think that they've got to create something new that's never been there before. Well, maybe you just need to optimize it a little bit better. Yeah. And so one of the things that I want as a society for us to do is kind of bring change to light and make it a positive thing that, we should be able to go out and have a job and then realize this isn't what I want to do, this isn't what I love, I'm going to go over here and try this. Yeah. Then I'm going to go, you know what I mean? And I'm not saying that to job hop a lot, but I think a lot of people get in their mind and they go spend 4 or 5 years in university and they become a mechanical engineer and then they hate it. It's like, well, now what? Now I feel bad that I spent 5 years doing this and now I don't like it. And it's like, well, change is just part of life. It's who we are as a species. And so I think to directly answer your question, I think going to these large organizations and seeing it's good, I think going to these smaller businesses and understanding it is great. But these large organizations are going to show you the systems and processes that you need from a metric standpoint. That was the big thing for me, was data, was understanding the predictability of your cash flow, how much revenue is each technician going to do. So, you can look at these businesses and say, if it's doing $10 million, I know you need at least 80 to 90 guys. Yeah. I mean, you don't have to give me your P&L and I can probably tell you close to what it is because they're very predictable businesses. And so going in with that intentionality to learn that stuff, I think is huge. Right,
okay. And so we're trying to do a lot here at A&M to encourage more innovation and entrepreneurship. It is, it's a small population right now, but we're hoping to grow it over time. What are I think also you're also unique because you're local, and we're trying to find new ways to engage with alumni.
Right.
What ideas do you have in that area?
Yeah.
Based on kind of traditionally, I think the university would ask you once your net worth gets above $100 million, or they would say, well, you've got a ring on your finger, you should kind of donate to football. Right. What would be some better ways for you that you prefer to engage with the campus?
So I'm a part of the Aggie Angel Network, and so I do invest there. I've invested in a couple of Aggie startups. I think aside from that, being part of the McFerrin Center, I work a lot with Blake Petty, and I think the avenue is really to get these mentors in a room, the guys that want to be there, right? And to help these students understand what it is they're trying to accomplish and what route they're going down, and then break it down from your technical expertise, in my industry, construction or whatever it is. But I think they'd be surprised with how many Aggies don't mind giving back. Sure. I think there's probably some gray area there between guys that take equity and make investments and things like that, and that can't necessarily, kind of like Aggie Angel Network, right? It's like a dotted line to the university. We're not correlated or associated with it. And so I think there's some gray area there. But I think that there's several centers, between Startup Aggieland, McFerrin. I don't know if Startup Aggieland's even around anymore.
Yeah, not really. But
okay, so McFerrin Center, Aggie Angel Network. I know there's a lot going on. Unfortunately, Laura Lee left. She was great.
Right.
But yeah, I think that just having more events and I don't really know the startups that are going on unless they come to Aggie Angel Network and pitch us. But at that point, you're kind of in a seed round or something like that. You know what I mean? You actually have a moat and you have traction, and you're not just an idea anymore. You're looking for money.
Yeah, that's right. It's funny, if you look at the ecosystem, there's some places where we're serving that assembly line, and others where there's kind of a gap.
Right.
And even that, where I probably spend a lot of my time is on the students who want to do something different. But they, again, most people just join these big companies and trying to convert some of them over to try something new for 6 months, a year.
Right.
And so hopefully get to someone who can eventually pitch to the Ag Angel Network.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So your plan is staying in this area, is that right?
Yeah.
Long
I think
plan.
I've got a sister in San Antonio and a sister in Dallas. My parents are still in East Texas, and so I don't think we're going to go anywhere. Barring in 2 or 3 years that might change, but for the foreseeable, we just built a place out. I was telling you in Iola.
Oh, great!
Moved in out there the
Nice.
weekend of the tornado.
Great.
So that was fun.
You have your own powerlifting setup there?
Yeah, it's funny. I do.
Are you still lifting?
Yeah, so I don't compete anymore.
Right.
But I still live for sure.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things with time, and so I don't compete. But yeah, I did actually built a really nice gym. That was my gift to myself.
Yeah.
So,
That's great.
It's funny.
That's great. Yeah, it's just gonna be hard for you to get a spotter.
Yeah.
At your weight.
My wife's not gonna cut it. Yeah, it's not gonna cut it.
That's great. Well, this has been super interesting,
Yeah,
Robert.
absolutely.
Yeah, really, really interesting. Anything else I guess you would like? Any words of advice you'd have to say to future students about kind of charting their own path? Any other thoughts?
I think a lot of it. If you look back at my journey and you look at it on paper, right, it looks like, man, this guy had all this planned out and he was, knocking this stuff down. And it really didn't go like that. It didn't flow like that. It was just one of those things where I had my head down and I was working really hard. And as opportunities came up, I was in a position to capitalize because of all the hard work and stuff that I'd put in. I call it like compounding interest of discipline and knowledge and things. And so I think that's one of the biggest things for me is like don't think you always have to have it planned out. I'm a big goal setting guy and a planning guy, but you have your head down and you work really hard, and then when opportunities come up, you're able to capitalize on that position.
That's
a big
great.
part of it.
That's great. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Robert, thank you for taking the time to join us
Absolutely.
this afternoon, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And we look forward to having a lot more episodes like this for the future. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
All right, gig 'em.